welcome to NEK VT Rocks. My guest today is Lynda Barber. Lynda is a well-known local author, and Lynda's got a new book. Do you want to start with this book? Tell us a bit about it, where it came from. Who's Cookie?
Who is Cookie? Yes. Well, the genesis for this book actually occurred many years ago on a day much like today. It was a cold November day. My late husband, Ray, and I were headed to the subway. Mm-hmm. We lived in Brooklyn, New York, and to go anywhere in Manhattan, that involved usually 3 subways. Mm-hmm. We had just walked down the subway stairs and were about to make the turn, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw a pile of rags. Well, that's not unusual in our subway station to see trash litter.
Right.
I was just about to continue on down the next set of stairs when, lo and behold, the rags moved. And I thought, ooh, stopped. Ray and I both stopped, went over, gingerly lifted up the rags, and there we saw a naked little tail.
Aww.
And I thought, baby pig? No, unlikely.
Yeah.
We then discovered a dog nude of hair, except 1 or 2 little sprouting from the tail. The most pathetic creature I've ever seen. Had a flea collar on, which was now hanging loose. The smell emanating from this dog was just appalling. And I realize on hindsight now, the dog, it was cold, on the concrete floor of the subway, probably had crawled under the pile of rags to die.
Yeah.
So we nixed our plans to go into Manhattan, obviously. Went back to the, Ray actually went back to the apartment. I waited with the dog. People were walking by, horrified. He brought a blanket. We scooped up the dog, took him back to our apartment, where we had 3 rescue dogs at that point. And I knew we had to keep this dog separate. Mm-hmm. The smell did not bode. The next morning we went to Dr. Zeitz, our local vet, who mercifully was a 2-block walk away. And Dr. Zeitz said, oh, this is the worst case of sarcoptic mange he'd ever seen in his life.
That's a nasty diagnosis.
Yeah, just the sound of it, sarcoptic mange. And he said, well, I was prepared for the worst. I thought he's just going to say, well, put the dog down out of its misery. He said, well, we have a cream. I said, a cream? He said, no guarantees. But if you start now, and he started, 3 times a day, put the cream on. And 2.5 months later, the dog we named Metro, obviously, sprouted hair.
And looked like a dog again.
Looked like a chia pet.
Yeah.
Remember the chia pets? Just sort of sprouted. And we couldn't keep the dog. We had a 2-room apartment. We had 3 dogs and 2 cats. We had Zogi, yes, I can remember all their names, named after books we were reading at the time. Zogi La. We must have been reading something Oriental then. Zen, probably. And so we thought, well, we can't keep the dog, but we've got to find the dog a home.
Yeah.
Well, at that point, my upstairs neighbor, Judy Rivera, told me that her mother had just lost her husband and was very lonely. And I said, Judy, do you think your mother would love a little companion so small, wouldn't eat much, wouldn't take up much space? So Metro went to live in upstate New York.
Perfect.
It was a happy ending.
That's great. And so is your book. Obviously, I don't really usually spend a lot of time reading books that are designed for kids that are under 6.
Yeah.
But I have read most of your other books, and I read this. I absolutely loved it because it's a book that so clearly isn't just about a little dog on the streets and eventually a happy ending. I mean, it is such a metaphor for homelessness, for kids trying to find where they fit in life, and so many other things. How long did it take you to put this book together?
Oh, Pam, I'm embarrassed. The seed, obviously, I couldn't get this little dog out of my mind. There were so many rescues in Brooklyn. The puppies born in the sewer.
Right.
I mean, just hundreds, really, in the 28 years I lived there. But I kept thinking, how did such a cute little dog end up in this situation? Obviously, somebody owned the dog. There
Right.
was the flea collar.
Yes.
And we know, and I know from living across the street then from a college campus, I used to come out and find dogs tied to the fence of the college. Somehow people thought, oh, college? We can't keep our dog, we don't want our dog, or whatever.
Yeah.
Some college student, well, you
Right.
can't take dogs into your
Right.
dorm. We would find them with a bowl of water sometimes, a bowl of food, maybe a $5 bill,
Yeah.
a little note saying we can't keep anymore. So I thought, okay, how did this dog end up? And it took I started writing it probably 20 years ago, and on and on and on it went, and I never got it right. It never seemed right. And it went through probably, 568 words I rewrote. I'm thinking maybe 500 times. Every word went under the microscope. But at the same time, I realized there were parts of this that were just kind of the story was telling itself in ways I didn't realize. For example, there's this element of trust in here
Right.
that I didn't think about consciously while I was writing. In other words, the dog responds to Cookie.
Yes.
The dog was owned by someone and lovingly would offer a cookie and the dog respond. When the dog responds to Cookie behind the Chinese restaurant, the dog is captured. The dog is taken off the street, but
Right.
the dog is taken to a shelter
Right.
where the
Cage.
smells and the sounds of homelessness are everywhere. But in the end, the dog sits up, still full of faith and hope, and is rewarded. And I see this parallel between my story with writing this book,
Right.
from the inspiration, execution, publication, to the dog's story,
Right.
and to people's story, too.
Right.
I remember once, this is a little segue, I came out of the subway and there was a man stretched out on the street, and he looked up at me. I made eye contact with him. This is something I think is so important, recognition. I mean, can you imagine if you were in a situation where you were ill, you were homeless, and no one looks at you?
You're invisible.
Then you are not a person. You don't. And that's one thing I always tried to do. I looked at this man, and he looked up at me, and his eyes were roomy. And I'll never forget what he said. He said, "What happens when the light dies?" And it was like, oh my God. And I had this knee-jerk response.
Sure.
I looked at him and I said, "You pray for peace." I have no idea where that came from. But I kept thinking, there's got to be more you can do than just telling someone to pray for peace. Recognition, of course, is part of it. But I then started carrying pockets full of quarters. This was in the early 70s, right? And if I saw that the homeless person was not drinking and did not have a flask,
Right.
I would give that person money. If they were obviously inebriated, I would go and I would buy them a
Food.
sandwich. I would buy them food.
Yeah.
I would try to always give them a card or tell them where the nearest shelter was, soup kitchen. But many of these people did not want to go to a shelter.
Do you blame them?
And how could you blame them?
Right.
And the days that I saw them pushing shopping carts with things that they
Right.
picked up off the street, or women with their legs wrapped, swollen legs
Right.
wrapped in rags. It was, and of course I grew up in this little town where I never saw a homeless
Right.
person.
But up here, we have homeless people.
We do
don't see
indeed,
them
and
as
they are
visibly.
invisible.
And we don't have a shelter.
And we don't have a shelter.
What are you hoping to do with this book?
I'm hoping to kind of prick some, raise awareness.
Kick some consciousness.
Kick some consciousness. It's out there, we don't see it, and we've got to recognize it, and we've got to act on it. There is no reason why anyone should be living in a car in our community.
Or in a tent.
Or in a tent.
Yeah, I learned recently of a homeless family who had been living in the car, who went to an organization for help and were given a tent. Nowhere to pitch it, no water, no nothing. But that was seen as a solution, and it's not. It's a family with young children.
A family with young children.
Yeah.
It's appalling.
Yeah.
So how do we make this happen, Pam?
$65,000 question, or whatever the number is.
Right.
But we do have a responsibility. I know that you're going around the country, or certainly around Vermont, doing
Yes.
readings, and that you have a purpose for doing that, as well as kicking consciousness.
Exactly. And I'm reading, in fact, the last couple of times I'm in a chair that's 1 foot off the ground, which is where I want to be. I want to be down where the children are, at their
Right.
level. I don't want to be standing up above them or at a lectern.
Right.
I get down on the floor with them and with my puppets, and they're pretty wide-eyed about this. You know, they're very touched by the story. I also try to give them some information about what they can do. I'll butcher this, but we can't all do great things, but we can do small things with great love.
Right.
And small things, it's very important, particularly for children who can feel overwhelmed, that they do these small things. And I see it on TV all the time with a young child, an 8-year-old, who decides she doesn't want a birthday present.
Right.
She's going to go out and raise money for her local shelter or her local food shelf.
The little kids know who the other little kids are who need help.
Yes, they do.
And they can, from this, learn how to help those little kids. Be a friend. Don't be mean, be a friend.
Exactly, be a friend,
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. You're doing readings at bookstores too, and I read something about the money that you raise from this book you're giving away.
Well, what I'm doing on December 9th is I want to celebrate 3 things. The publication of the book, the holiday season, of course,
Ho, ho,
December, my birthday, which is then, and what I want to do is I want to give back to the community. Vermont has given me a lot in the way of inspiration. Living in the woods, when I wrote many of my books, I was very blessed with having that sense of beauty and serenity around me. And what I'm doing is I'm actually donating the money. It's not actually from the book sales. It's actually my own personal money that I want to give to a nonprofit. And what you do is you come to the party. Is it all right to mention it? On December 9th.
Absolutely.
And have some cake. My friend Sherry Safford at Red Sky Trading, the penultimate
Yes.
baker in the kingdom,
Fabulous.
is doing an incredible cookie cake. And we'll have refreshments. Ben Kinsley will play guitar. We're going to have some readings. I'm even going to, I'll sign a book if you buy it. I even have gift wrapping with dog paw prints on it already under the Christmas tree. You'll write the name, whoever buys a book can write the name of their favorite nonprofit down, be it Umbrella or NECA, Feline and Friends, Frontier, whatever. Drop it into a cookie jar, and at 2 o'clock we pick the winning. And
That's very
charity
cool. Yeah, we'll get some money.
Gets $500.
Nice.
Yes.
Very nice.
So it's it's a win-win, I think, for everyone.
Absolutely.
And at our wonderful independent bookstore, Nevermore,
Yeah.
with Larry, who's agreed to host this, so it's going to be fun.
It is. How many books have you written?
This is 15.
Wow.
This is number 15.
And all of your books are aimed at little people, younger people.
All but two. I had a brief point in my career in New York City when I thought I was an interior designer. God knows where that came from. And so I did two so-called shelter books.
Yeah.
I was also writing for Ms. Magazine then on how to fix things. So I had this kind of very bifurcated career. I was doing articles for Ms. on how to empower women that they can fix their whatever. And then I was doing these articles on how to, personality paint, what color you should paint your room. But 13 are for children.
Yeah.
And several of them are about animals. 4 of them are actually on word histories. I'm fascinated, as a writer, of course, I'm fascinated with words, etymology. So I did 4 books on word histories, which were a lot of fun. That took me into the New York Public Library before computers, when I actually got to go to the rare book room and put white gloves on.
Oh, wow.
And look at wonderful old books.
Yeah.
It's an exciting time to be in New York.
Yeah. Yours are the kinds of books that adults buy and then share with kids in their lives.
Adults buy the books, so
Yes.
those covers have to
Appeal to adults.
appeal to adults, and I think that's an appealing cover.
Oh, it's a lovely cover. Yeah, I bought Boo a long time ago to give to a little kid, and clearly that little ghost on it.
The little ghost. And
Yeah.
Boo is, I realize there's a great parallel between Boo and this. The little ghost doesn't give up. The little ghost can't do what's expected of him.
Right.
But then there's that little serendipitous bat on the shoulder. And that book actually arose from a bat that flew by my head one night in our unelectrified camp, and flew so close to me. I saw the bat's face.
Yeah.
And it was all, well, you know, bats
They're
aren't
beautiful.
particularly. I think
Oh, I
they're
think they're
beautiful.
beautiful.
They're all scrunched up. But and bats, I love bats.
Yeah.
Everyone must love bats because, Pam, do you know how many mosquitoes one bat can kill
Millions.
in one evening?
Thousands.
50,000
Yeah.
mosquitoes. So when kids, I say, who loves bats? They'll go,
Your bats, lady.
I'll say, well, who loves mosquitoes? I said, well, if you don't love mosquitoes, then you must love bats.
Right.
Bats are our champions, and they're suffering right now from, of course,
Absolutely.
from white nose syndrome. So,
And we're poisoning
bravo,
them,
bats. That bat gave me the story
Yeah.
behind Boo
Oh, that's great.
and Metro, the bottom of the subway stairs,
Right.
gave
It's-
me Cookie.
Well, think about opossums and how they eat ticks, but everybody hates opossums because they're not the prettiest critters on the planet, but they're wonderful.
Oh, they're wonderful, and there's a wonderful society in England. Pam, you may know about it. They champion the so-called ugly critters,
animals,
the
yes,
ugly
yes.
animals. I mean, it's easy to raise money for a panda or a
Yeah,
koala,
something cute.
one of those cute, cuddly animals. But how about the animals that just aren't so pretty?
Yeah, like most of us humans, if
Yes.
you think about it.
The anteaters of the world, and
Yeah.
the skinks, and the sloths, and all of the things that...
Those who are evolved to do something incredibly useful.
Exactly.
But if you don't have a long pointed nose and beady eyes that you can spot ticks, then how can you do it? If you can't
Exactly.
fly at night with that amazing vision, you
Oh.
can't catch mosquitoes.
Incredible. Yes, yeah. So I'm a big fan of bats. One of the first things we did when we built our camp in Vermont was put up bat houses. We joined
Yeah.
the Bat Conservation Society and put up bat houses.
Yeah. Do you have more books in your future?
Oh boy, do I have more books. I have many books, and I look at my file cabinet in the basement, and I realize when I go through the files and I see all the books that I wrote that found no homes. And I swear there are enough, I saved most of my rejection letters, particularly the informative ones.
Yes.
And I have enough rejection letters, I'm guessing, to paper every Comfort Inn from here to Tampa, Florida. But I'm not stopping.
That's a lesson in persistence.
It's a lesson in persistence, and that's one thing that when I do go to the schools and the libraries, I take the manuscript, I submit it, and I show them how it came back from the editor. And there are lines and marks, and the kids are like, wow, what's wrong with that? Well, I didn't get it right the first time. Right. And they're like, really? I said, well, you know when you write something, you think it's just perfect? Well, maybe it's not. Maybe, and writing is rewriting. I taught writing for a while, and yes, it's quite a process. You open a vein and then you bleed a little. And then
That's a lovely metaphor.
Yes, there's a lot of bleeding involved with writing, but no one puts a gun to your head and says you have to do it.
So your next book, is that also aimed at children?
Yes. Both of them are aimed at children. I have an adult one also that is based, well, it's 20 years since I've lost my husband, and there's been a lot of percolating from that, and that could be an interesting journey, going through all those journals.
Yeah, that's an important concept for kids to understand too, because we sanitize life around children now. They don't grow up experiencing the cycle of life.
Right, yeah.
Because we think somehow they're too fragile to understand or to accept it, and whereas previous generations learned about the cycle of life and death.
Oh, definitely, because well, in rural America, most of the children were reared on farms.
Absolutely.
And the cycle, the life, the death.
And the life and death of siblings, which most kids don't experience anymore.
No, but boy, did they ever 100 years ago.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a very different world. I remember one day I was in the supermarket in Brooklyn, and this woman came up to me, and she was holding a cucumber. And it, for some reason, this was quite a while, it had not been waxed.
Good. They shouldn't be. I don't wax cucumbers.
And she said to me, good Lord, what is this? What are they trying to sell us? And she threw it down. This was an organic object.
Yeah.
But she had only seen it in its sanitized form.
Oh, how sad.
And I thought, of course, had been coming to Vermont. I'd been going to farmers market. This woman had never been to a farmer's market, had never seen an unwaxed cucumber. Said there's a lot of sanitizing going. I also, I had an interesting, something happened in Scotland actually, 2 years ago. And I think this is something that has haunted me, and we'll see what comes of it. We were having breakfast in the breakfast room, and I never saw the child's face. Child facing that way, and I am facing the child's back. I did see the father. The father is sitting next to the child, mother at the other end. The father very busy reading his newspaper, and the little, I'm not sure, I think it was a little boy, not sure, had a paper in front of him, and he was going, Daddy, Daddy, I want to tell you about the new adventure. He's going, son, sit up. It's very corporate approach here. Eat your oatmeal. And periodically, and he kept trying, Daddy, Daddy, but I want to tell you about the captain. And the mother, I could see, was trying to sort of intervene and soften it. The father never did recognize this child, who obviously had a story to tell. Was
Right.
very proud. I don't know if there was a drawing, whatever he does. The father finally, in disgust, kind of put his paper down and said, "Okay, come on, let's go." And you know, I remember coming back on the plane and thinking, what was that child trying to tell his dad?
Mm-hmm.
And so that has been percolating for a couple of years.
Particularly now with the advent of cell phones and people totally focused on this object.
In this
In their
case, the
hands.
father, it was a newspaper, which
Yeah.
today we know.
Right.
I mean, I used to love to go to restaurants in New York and listen,
I know.
To
I do
converse-
too.
to take it in.
Spy.
to spy.
Yeah.
I would
People
sit there.
watching.
People watching,
It's
and
wonderful.
I was always writing because
Yeah.
I was always working on something.
So nobody knew you were spying.
No, because I was always just sort of doodling, and
Yeah.
sometimes I'd pick up a line of dialogue, and I thought, it's cute. The last time I went to New York, couples never looked up from their phones.
Right.
I thought, why have they gone out to dinner at this nice restaurant?
People
They're not
pushing
engaging.
pushing strollers on their cell phones.
It's
I know, it's crazy.
we're not identifying. We're not engaging anymore. Even at the airport, I went up and had a few moments to get something to eat. And sometimes it's fun to engage.
Absolutely.
The bartender, the waiter, or whatever. There was this screen in front of me. I was to punch in what I wanted. I couldn't speak.
Right.
And then it was just ordered and plopped down.
Yeah.
It reminded me of when I first went to New York. I used to have lunch periodically at Horn on Hard Art. And I'd put my money in,
Yeah.
and this little thing would come around. The sandwich would come out, you'd put it on, you'd take it in your tray. And I thought, this automation, I mean,
Robo world.
Robo World.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So that'd be a great story.
Yes, yes. But
Yeah.
more stories to come, I hope. I hope very much. But this one I'm probably more proud of than this 15 is my proudest. I
That's
think.
great. And in our last couple of minutes, because 30 minutes goes really fast, where can people buy Cookie's Fortune and your other books for that matter?
Well, Larry has them at the Nevermore
Huh?
on
Yeah.
East Main Street. Local bookstores will all
Mhm.
have them, and I encourage people to go to their local
shop
bookstore.
local.
Shop local, please. I
Yes.
know it's so easy to hit that button.
Shop small, shop local.
Shop, absolutely, but it is available on all the sites.
Right.
IndieBound is my favorite.
Yes.
There's Barnes & Noble, and there's
Amazon,
Amazon.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
IndieBound, here's
Yeah.
a plug for IndieBound.
Absolutely.
Because this was published by Griffin Press,
Mhm.
which is a small independent
Right.
publisher, a voice for the voiceless. All their books champion the voiceless, whether it's a horse, a chicken, a cat, a dog. It's a wonderful little house publishing house out in Minnesota.
It's great.
And I am so grateful to them for publishing it, and look forward to more.
And it's a wonderful holiday gift for
It's a wonderful
lot
holiday
of people.
gift. It's a and we're going to have fortune cookies at the party too.
Are you writing the lines to go in them?
Well, actually, there will be some extra special cookies, and if they are pulled out, I have copies of my previous books that I'll be
Oh,
giving
cool.
away as prizes.
Yay.
Another reason to come. Support Larry, buy some Christmas
Yeah.
gifts, get a back copy of one of my other books that I'm going to have some. I've written a cat book too, Cocoa Cat Inside and Out, which champions. I know people love to give their cats the run of the yard or the woods, but cats are not endangered, but many birds are. So
know.
that's my plug. I know I have very strong feelings about that. There are ways to exercise cats, rather than allow them to.
There are also reflective collars, though, that actually do work.
Oh,
And birds get the message. and
birds
they-
get the
yes,
message.
they
Oh,
do.
thank you, whoever invented these
Yeah,
reflective
a local
collars.
person. Somebody local, I'll give you the information.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes. The cat looks like a clown wearing it, but my cats wear them.
Wonderful. And they've not delivered any birds
They
to your
cannot
doorstep.
catch birds when they have those collars on.
That's one thing that prompted me to write that cat book.
I think it's called Bird Safe, but I'll get you the information.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I wish that had been out what I'd written. Cocoa Cat, I would have
Right. But
given them a plug for
do
it.
another one. And we are out of time. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you
and
for having me.
I really hope people run out and get Cookie's fortune.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Pam.